Sir, before you came in on the show, we discussed a lot about what possibly could be done as far as these kinetic options are concerned. Now, we've heard two important political statements of intent from the Prime Minister, later from the Home Minister earlier today, who has said, chun chun kar badla lenge. When you hear everything so far on this story, what is your assessment or what possibly are the options India could be looking at?
Well, I think the Prime Minister has given the armed forces a clear direction. He has said that the nation is angry. The Prime Minister has the mandate of the nation, and he's told the army, the defense forces, rather, that the nation expects and that he has every confidence. The Prime Minister himself has every confidence in the defense forces to deliver a crushing blow to Pakistani terrorism. He has also given them a free hand with regard to the modalities of how they wish to carry out and fulfill this objective. As far as the action itself is concerned, I suppose the army, the defense forces will report back to the Prime Minister and through him perhaps to the CCS of what they have in mind, and give them an evaluation of the different scenarios that can be looked at.
Okay, and when you say this, I also have another straight question that we had discussed about how Pakistan is getting isolated. But I don't think that's the important story anymore. How do you see the responses so far of different world capitals? And when you see this fight against terror, the very fact that the US today has called out Pakistan for what it is, though it has also said that we must de-escalate tensions, what is your reading of a lot of maneuvering, possibly, Vivek Katju, that possibly could be happening?
My focus is on the latter part of what the US has said. When the US speaks to us, it naturally will first of all focus on Pakistan's involvement in terror, and that is something well known. The Pakistanis have practiced it for over 3.5 decades. No one in the world is ignorant of Pakistan's involvement in state-sponsored terror, in cross-border terrorism. In fact, if you read the Indo-Saudi joint statement, the Prime Minister had to cut short his visit to Saudi Arabia, but a joint statement was issued that talks of cross-border terrorism too. And Saudi Arabia is an old friend, quote-unquote, of Pakistan. However, let us be clear in our minds that the focus of the world and the major powers is today in wanting the two countries to exercise restraint. That does not mean that we should not proceed in such a crucial manner, exercising our strategic autonomy. We must do, and the government must do, what it thinks is in India's interest. But the world community is concerned. It is concerned about escalation. And I carefully heard General Dhillon. The thing that he did not mention, which is something that the world community always has at the back of its mind, is that both India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons. And it is concerned about a situation arising where both countries go up the escalatory ladder. That does not mean, I repeat, that we should not take such action as is needed for us to combat terrorism and to fulfill the objective that the Prime Minister has set out for the armed forces. But it does mean that we have to be conscious of what the world is saying.
I think that's a fair and a very balanced point, Vivek Katju, that you do put out. Now, I just want to, jog your memory and also our viewers' memory on a number of points that India has made vis-a-vis the world and vice versa. The Prime Minister has said multiple times in relation to the Russia-Ukraine war that this is not the era of war. And clearly you have seen India reaching out, with that white flag and saying we must not exercise that option in case that is just not the only option left. But what do you do in a situation, Vivek Katju, where you have a war foisted on you, where you have 26 of your innocent civilians that are gunned down in this dastardly attack? And when you're dealing with a rogue neighbor like Pakistan, that in spite of everything, will never see the writing on the wall.
It has always been a very, very difficult situation for India to handle. And I think, to be honest with ourselves and to be realistic, we've searched for answers for the last 35 years. We went through a process where we did not take kinetic action. Then came the surgical strikes, which I believe were correct. Then came Balakot, which I also feel was a correct response to the Pulwama terrorist attack. Now, will Pakistan give up terrorism? I have grave doubts because Pakistan has made the use of terror as part of its strategic doctrine.
Yes.
You mentioned that the Prime Minister has said this is not an era of war. The Prime Minister has not said that countries should not defend themselves, that countries should not exercise the right of self-defense. The Prime Minister has not said that countries must suffer terrorism and just sit with their hands folded and say that, look, we've got to just accept. So a distinction has to be drawn on what the Prime Minister said in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war and in what India faces and has been facing at the hand of Pakistan. What has the Prime Minister said? He has said, take such action that will deliver a crushing blow to Pakistani terror. He has not asked that there should be war.
Yes.
His focus is on ending terror. Therefore, I think a distinction has to be drawn between the Prime Minister's comments to President Putin. I think he made them soon after, he made them perhaps in September
Correct.
of 2022, when the, if my memory is correct, when the Russian attack on Ukraine began. It had begun in February of that year. And he was right. This is not an era of war. In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that no eras are eras of war.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that nations and peoples who suffer from terrorism should not adopt all means that they can to stop terrorism.
Okay.
But I will again remind you that when you draw or when you analyze what the major powers are saying, what the United States is saying, then always focus on what is their interest.
Absolutely.
They are not, just one more sentence, they are not concerned, they will give sympathies and they will express all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, their people are not dying, our people have died. So their interest is to stop escalation. They don't want that problem. That is their primary interest. And we should be very clear in our analysis.